Yes.
Una,
Yes.
Cheryl, Margaret,
Yeah.
Shelby,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
and Ben.
Public comment?
Anyone?
Public.
I was trying to go second, but I'll go.
Oh.
Thank you. I hate to have my back on everybody, so please let me know the best place to be. I like to be considerate. Thank you.
How about right there?
Right here, like this?
No, right there.
Like this?
Facing us, no, like that. Like in front of the blue chair, facing us, and we can all see you.
But then they see my back.
No, if you go there, nobody will see you there.
Nobody sees. Oh.
There you go.
But then I won't be in front of it.
Oh, you want to be in front of the camera? Well,
So
all right.
people can.
What's up?
I'll jump back and forth. How about that? I know people who do that.
Whatever you want.
Hello, I'm sorry. My name is Christine Schwartz, and I'm an active community member. I like to volunteer and videotape many commission meetings, rent board meetings, council meetings, a whole lot of community meetings. One I will do probably tomorrow in remembrance of a friend, William Caldera. I'm sure there are many folks in this room who remember him. And I'm trying to keep it together so that I can talk and you can understand me. But it hurts inside because he recently passed away. I don't know all the details. I know that there are a lot of rumors. He became homeless after a long-standing eviction, and I hear there were plenty more there. I would like to have your ears and focus on something that we can do to make it so that people who are housed, who have disabilities, including mental illness disabilities, I don't know how to appropriately say that, I'm sorry, maybe I'll ask you how to say that appropriately, people with mental illness and or other disabilities, and to have them have more protections before they become homeless and on the street and destitute and all the other things that people with homeless issues experience. Because I think that, and I know we have other laws, etc., but it's not good enough. And I'm sorry, but I'm not. I'm angry. I'm angry that even just one person passed away on the street. And I think, I've been talking to you for a while now about this and other commissions. How do we help this person? What's out there? What can we do? And here is a person, we lost his soul. I'm not angry in the way that I'm combative and I want to, fight somebody and punch them out or, make their world hell. I'm angry in the sense that I want change and I want an intervention. And I know that people have a right to kill themselves, I guess, if that's what the understanding is, because they have a right to refuse services. Therefore, the only other alternative in some cases is death if you're not getting the services you need. And again, I don't know why or how he passed away, but I think there should be some intervention. And I mentioned conservatorship. I haven't been able to speak to folks about this, and I know that people see that as an evil because it takes away people's dignity and their right to choose certain things. But I know for myself, I'm a conservator, and I know that I do a pretty good damn job of doing it, and I'm a very caring person, and I know that there are caring people out there who can afford people that, and there are laws. I mean, you have to be on the up and up if there's finances, involved or whatnot. And to me, conservatorship in this instance possibly could have saved 300's life. And if that was the instance, I think it's worth it if it's only facing dignity for a short period of time until he gets housed again and with services. And I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it so much that I couldn't do a thing about it. Not one thing. And I know as a community, Berkeley tried. I know so many people who tried, who kept up with him, who fed him, I called 911 myself. I tried to get mental health when there was threats of, suicide. Nothing that I know of, because I know there's HIPAA, that I could see was going to help him. We got to recognize in these instances where there are cases where if somebody's going down this road, this is one of those instances where this is the exception, the red flag. Ding, 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 ding. We call the bell. This is not right. He's a son of Berkeley. We all know him. Well, most of us know. And I had another friend who died of suicide. And again, I don't know how he died. But I think we need to do something. Berkeley, as a city, as a community, needs to change the system in some way. I refuse to let this go. Not one more life. And I'm not saying this for a political, stupid reason. I'm saying it because I mean it. I don't want another death on the street. Our lives are valuable. What is the worth of our life? Thank you. What is the worth of a life to you? Is your life worth something to you? Is your family member's life worth something to you? Wouldn't you do something for your family member? I know I would. I know I would do a great deal before I would let this happen to a family member. I know I have my limits, like everybody does. And I know this was a frustrating situation, but I keep feeling and I keep thinking that if I just kept trying, if I just did this, or if I just did that, if I just didn't listen, that I should just walk away and let it go. Maybe this is something I need to work out in therapy, but I'm just saying that there's got to be something. Thank you.
Our action item is to approve a few of us are trying to keep it, okay. Let's approve the minutes, the April 25th meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the
I'm
minutes.
sure everybody's read them and they don't want to make any changes.
Second, anybody? Okay. Roll call, please.
Okay. Erlinda,
Yes.
Una,
Yes.
Cheryl, Margaret,
Yes.
Shelby,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
and Ben.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And it's my pleasure to welcome Lorna. And tell me your name again.
Marissa and
Marissa,
Joyce.
right, from Bonita House. We've been looking forward to seeing you and hearing all the news. So here we are, all ears.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's been a while since the last time I came. I think it was, almost a year and a half, two maybe years. And suffice it to say, tonight as I'm sitting here, we do have good news. After that 2-year period, there was a lot of activity going on with the county in terms of getting various approvals for our being able to start the construction at 1909 University Avenue. The wheels of the bureaucracy move very, very slow. But I had every confidence that it was going to get to the point where it is today. And that is, we broke ground. Marissa, by the way, is our project manager for the construction. So if you have any questions at all about anything related to the construction, this is the lady with the answers. But we broke ground, when did we break ground in April?
April 1st?
April 1st, we broke ground. They anticipate having the work completed by the end of July. Now remember, I just said the end of July, but also remember I said it's construction people that we're working with. So, the date is like, however, we got a tentative date. And so right now we are working on refining the budget that we had originally created 3 years ago for this program. And so we're working with Alameda County and Steve to upgrade, revamp the budget with the bottom line that we have with regards to opening up the program. We also, during that 2-year hiatus period, we had a task force going on. So, and we met several times with the task force, and the task force consisted of community members and current members of the current Creative Wellness Center that we have. And we talked about a lot of issues in terms of, and basically a lot had to do with the design. The task force it was really good to have folks there and really get a sense of the internal design of the program. So we got a lot of feedback and what we could incorporate into the design with the architects that was done. But it was really a great process. And then we started talking about the program, the actual program. And the program is going to be designed for both older adults as well as transitional age youth. And in my mind, eventually there's going to be some exciting intergenerational programming going on at that location. So we're really excited about those possibilities. So right now, with us working on the budget and getting that tight as soon as possible, and we've reconvened the task force because we had a mandate from the city of Berkeley to come up with a name for the facility so that we can put it on the building. So we reconvened the task force because we stopped the meetings because the wheels of the bureaucracy was just moving too slow, and we got to a point where we said we'll just wait until we get the final word to start the construction. And so reconvening the task force and focusing on the name of the facility. We got several recommendations, and those recommendations have been forwarded to both Steve and James Wagner over at the county. So we have to have that information into the city by the end of this month?
Hopefully by the end of the month, because it takes about, with the architects doing the final plan, it will take them about a week to 2 weeks. Then with the city, review process is about 3 to 4 weeks, they said. Then posting for 2 weeks, for the community feedback, and then if there's no input, then the city puts its final approval, and then we do the signage.
So that's where we are right now. I mean, and we're going to be pushing really quickly with regard to the budget, so that we can get into really nailing down the specifics around the program. And that's where we're at right now. We're looking at several options of different types of things going on, all the way from an arts program to vocational services program, to actually a nutrition program. So it's a lot of things, but a lot of the suggestions and recommendations are going to come from our task force and what we've already been doing with regard to programming over at our other wellness center over in Eastmont. So we've got a lot of data from those folks over there as well in terms of what's working well and what's not really working so well. Technology is going to be in this mix too. There's no two ways about that. I mean, we are in the 21st century, and folks still want to learn new stuff. So that will definitely be a resource within the facility as well. Am I forgetting anything? questions?
Yeah, I do, and then Shelley, you wanna go first?
I appreciate the focus with programming, but I originally thought that the wellness center was a place where the whole population of Berkeley was welcome and that people who had a need could go there.
That's correct.
Okay, so you're,
That hasn't changed.
along with that, you're gonna have some specific programming
Yes.
for certain focus groups.
Yes.
However, it's going to be open to the public.
Right.
Thank you.
Steve?
So we just, say, the idea of the program is, it is open to everybody, and when people go there, they're gonna wanna do things.
Yes.
So the programming is the things that will help draw people to it, and give people meaningful activity to be doing during the
Yes.
day. That's the programming that Lorna's talking
Thank
about.
you.
So, can you share with us what you've learned from the other center? What kinds of things people are more engaged in? What, how does wellness come about because people are participating in the center? What is the data showing?
Yeah, it's about connecting. It's about folks with lived experiences coming in, taking on leadership roles. It's about communing around meals. It's about cultural and diversity kinds of issues, like, for instance, Henry Louis Gates, who is an educator, Harvard professor over at Harvard, there did a series on different cultures within South America from different countries, and we had a program. It was for the month of February, which is Black History Month, and our responsibility for that program over there is for African American and Latinos. And so Henry Louis Gates did a whole series, 5 countries, talking about the history and the heroes that unfortunately, we don't learn in our history in this country. And that was done around lunchtime, so the meal was served, and then people watched the video, and then a couple hours after that, lots of discussion. There's also ongoing groups for men as well as ongoing groups for women. There are safety groups. There are rap groups, because we have a relationship with peers, and they come over and train our folks. One of the exciting things that we could definitely transfer over into Berkeley is mental health first aid training. And we had our first mental health first aid training at Eastmont. It was a full house, standing room only, 8 hours, and people were riveted. They stayed the entire 8 hours, and then we got glowing recommendations. And it's a I don't know how many people have been into a mental health first aid training, but it to me, and I've been doing this a long time, it is one of the most, I think it's wonderful in terms of the structure of the program, in terms of how the language is used in the program, and the visuals that come with the program. And at the end of that day, I was like, everybody should know this. Everybody should know this. So we were able to secure a grant to develop mental health first aid training and we're going to kick it off in Berkeley and train our staff. I want to have a trainers program there of folks who live in Berkeley, because it's kind of challenging when you do specific training programs for staff, because staff move on, but residents are there. So that is going to be on the agenda for Berkeley when we open up, is to have that mental health first aid training there. And the mental health first aid training is sponsored by the National Council of Behavioral Health, which is located in Washington, D.C., and they've upgraded all of their training materials and stuff. So I'm really excited about getting that part going. And really the focus in Berkeley, as well as in Eastmont, is to really make sure that we make every effort to capture folks with lived experience, to volunteer within the program, and to work within the program. as well, so, cause that's what works, Lorna, that's what
Do know
works.
that.
And, you know, the whole notion of, vocational services is a piece where people ordinarily don't think that people who have serious mental illness can go back to work. Well, I'm here to tell you that they can go back to work and enjoy it. So that's gonna be a component of the service that we offer at Berkeley, as well as, they call it individual placement and support, but it's vocational services. And you know, one of the things, I think I said this the last time I was here, when this first was announced, I had a summons from the business community and went to a meeting. I think I shared that with you guys, about 25 businesses there. So, you know, they're our neighbors, but I also see potential in those relationships downfield, you know, so those are the kinds of things. Did I answer your question, Lorna?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Margaret?
So it's been a while, and you know, we're looking at finishing the construction, and I'm interested in the funding, the revenue that will be used for the program. And there was a contract, I think in 2016-17, that was signed for the wellness center, that the money went, I think, into another program. But if we read the contract, it had it laid out for specialty mental health services. I think it was tier 1 to 3. So I'm wondering, in this programming, you know, there's Medi-Cal. Is Medi-Cal a part in any way of the
No.
wellness center?
Well,
it is, Lorna, isn't it?
right now it is with,
It's got different tiers, so the main
I know it does.
services don't have any medical
What I wanna
services.
know is, are Berkeley mental health people gonna be down there doing their appointments?
We don't know. We're definitely gonna have a lot of cross-pollination. We don't really, we have ample space to see clients in right now, so it's not, we don't need extra treat rooms, but we're certainly we're hoping that this will become a place where a lot of the folks who are open clients for us that live in Berkeley will be able to engage in really robust wellness activities. So we wanna partner to get folks there. Someone wouldn't ever be open to Berkeley mental health case management services and the more limited case management services at the wellness center. You can't be open to two different services, but we're thinking that there'll be a lot of partnership back and forth, and we're excited about that.
that's the only way it can work, Margaret, and that's the thing that I
I know,
believe.
but what I'm wondering is the clarity, because the wellness center is gonna be an open area, is that right? And
Sure.
meeting with people is confidential.
Oh,
Oh,
of
no,
course.
there's-
Yeah, we're gonna have.
So there
we
are
do.
other wellness centers. They run one in Eastmont Mall,
Yeah.
and there are other wellness townhouses not that far away in Oakland. We already have clients that use these wellness centers. How to kind of balance that relationship is something that hasn't really been an issue. The boundaries, I understand your question. The boundaries will be very clear for folks. The wellness center is for recovery and wellness, and when we're doing clinical services, in terms of pieces, that'll be someplace else, because we really want this to be a peer-driven, recovery-based, a new thing for us that we really
Right.
haven't had.
That's
So,
what I'm concerned
yeah,
about as well.
well, I guess we all share that same desire that you're pointing out. We all want the same thing here.
What I'm seeing is, you know, we know there's a number of different kinds of services that are provided under specialty mental health. It's not just clinician, it's not targeted case management, there's also day treatment. I mean, there's several different kinds of ways in which to build Medi-Cal for people who have serious mental illness. So what I'm wondering, you know, if somebody goes there for recovery and they wanna do vocational, or they wanna do this or that, and they're getting better, but is that day being billed to Medi-Cal?
No.
Yeah.
So the way it works is there'll be a smaller set, and I can't remember the number, but something like 35 folks at any one time who are eligible to get case management, which would be billed to Medi-Cal. And that set of folks are for sort of two populations of people. One would be people who have previously been getting pretty intensive mental health services, like at Berkeley Mental Health, and maybe don't need those anymore. They're ready for the next step in their life. But there's a lot of concern that if they were to drop them, that person's worried about, I'm not gonna do so well, so they're kind of hesitant. So one thing they could do is we would call that stepping down, to getting some case management services at the wellness center and utilizing that wellness center, with the idea being that they would stop needing those services, hopefully. The other thing is, as Shelby said, lots of people we hope are just gonna enter into the system here, because it's gonna be an identifiable place, and people maybe aren't gonna come to us, will go to the wellness center. And if they identify those folks and say, oh, this person needs treatment, as opposed to then immediately trying to connect them up someplace else and hand them off, they can provide case management for a period of time to get that person, A, maybe that's all that person needs, or B, maybe they do need to be handed off to another team, but to build those stronger relationships so that person might be willing to do that. So it's like, the idea is that the case manager is either to help folks be able to let go of their case managers that they might not need anymore, or to really get connected in the system, or get some short-term intensive help that maybe just with that, that's all someone needs. And then their peer community, their whatever else they have going on in their life would be enough.
The other part of my question is, if you do have people come in who may not already have services, granted you can serve them with specialty mental health, but does either facility have a certified enrollment Medi-Cal person?
I don't think they
No.
will
Okay,
either.
Berkeley Free Clinic has a whole section, and you need to get some people there for that, because it's critical for people to
Yeah,
get their services.
I completely agree with you. I don't know why we don't have someone.
But all you
to
gotta
be
do
doing
is call that
Right.
clinic.
Well, mostly what we do is we call a number and we can sign them up, but you're absolutely right. I don't know why, our CAT staff should know how to get folks Medi-Cal and be certified and things like that. I actually really agree with you, Margaret. It's a great suggestion. And maybe something that could happen there as well, I think we'd have to wait and see, because it's not so robustly staffed. So I think we wanna sort of see what's the capacity first, and then you start adding in services as you sort of see what you can and can't do. But we are more robustly staffed, and it's a good point.
Well, it's also something, if you can't provide the service, the person is still there to get them enrolled. And at Berkeley Free Clinic, they spend 3 or 4 months in training, so they're able to do Medi-Cal, food stamps, and all of this. So it would be very easy to link it up.
Yeah, we do a lot of referrals. Mostly we go to the HAC, but I totally understand what you're saying, and I think sometimes we use the Berkeley Free Clinic.
I
It's a
can
great
see-
suggestion, Margaret.
I can see us having a very intimate relationship with Berkeley Free Clinic.
Definitely,
Yes.
you have
You know,
STD,
it's like, the thing,
hepatitis.
the thing that I've come to learn over the years is that from an organizational perspective, we don't have to do everything. There are a number of good resources around, and the key is making those connections and establishing the relationship and making sure that the advocacy is really clear on behalf of the individual, so.
I was up there the other night on a 2-hour seminar, and they have HIV, STDs,
Yeah. Very cool.
hepatitis, support groups, women's and men's primary care. I mean, it would be a great way to partner for.
Absolutely,
Also,
absolutely.
as you know, because Bonita House has been around a long time, and has always had a relationship with the Free Clinic, because so many of Bonita House's folks, the food projects folks, Bosses folks,
Right.
get services at the Free Clinic,
Right,
you know,
A
so
residential
there's
program.
already that built-in history.
Yeah.
Those organizations working very closely.
but it's even, somebody asked me a question about what we learned from Eastmont. The connection with existing sources is vital, and we make assumptions that people know how to do that, and they don't. And so part of our role is gonna be advocating and making sure that those connections are not only made, because the thing that really gets my goat is that referring somebody there and thinking that they're gonna go there, and then not doing the follow-up to make sure that we're checking in to see if it was an easy entry or what were the challenges, and helping them to overcome that stuff. So it's more than just making a referral. It's gonna be more than just making a referral. It's that whole 360 thing to make sure that the individual is getting the service that they need and that they're comfortable with,
Questions from any of the other commissioners?
I'd like to go
Oh,
on a
yeah.
tour.
Would you like to, to go there now, or when it opens, or
Whenever.
you haven't seen the building?
Never.
Okay, so,
Okay, I got a query.
one second, Shelby, is it possible to go inside the building as it is now?
not
No,
right now
because
doing
it's not safe.
construction.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
And you expect it to open around, you know, having done buildings,
Early fall.
16 buildings, I can tell you.
That's a good answer, early fall.
Early fall. We'll be spending Christmas there.
Yes, you will be, yeah, definitely, Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Shelby?
Well, this may be too soon, but do you have an idea about the hours? And what is the capacity? Because I guess there's going to be a limit to how many people can fit in that facility.
Yeah, no, I don't have the exact number yet, and the hours are still, it's in motion in terms of exactly where we're gonna end up, because I need Steve's input and.
But I would suggest that you make it earlier rather than later.
Uh-huh,
And a lot of lost souls are probably looking for a place to go early in the morning.
Well, that's good for that.
absolutely, yeah,
That's
sure.
good for that.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just had one last one. I mean, first of all, when people don't feel well, I think it's so much easier if someone's there. Like, you know, lifelong care presented on primary care and how they're integrating with secondary care. And, you know, along with what I had suggested on the Berkeley Free Clinic, if people came to the wellness center, I think then people actually would get the help that they need. Because they're not always likely, if you don't feel well, why walk up there
Right.
and go? Just seems like that would be a great place for people to get some level of medical care. I mean, it doesn't have to be
Margaret, Lorna's MO, it's mental health, substance abuse, and health.
Yeah,
Those three are like that,
yeah,
as far as I'm concerned.
right.
So in terms of the services that we're gonna be offering, it's gonna encompass that holistic perspective in working with folks.
Yeah,
So, yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
I can't see one without the other, to tell you the truth.
mm,
And our being well-versed in the resources and making the connections in all three of those camps to make sure that our folks get the services that they need. So, definitely.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We look forward to coming back and saying, we're opening up such and such and doing such and such.
And now we can go on a tour.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, absolutely, absolutely.
We'll bring our own hard hats.
Good idea, because I'm sure that's gonna be a requirement. But
Wait.
thanks, everybody.
Can I ask one more thing?
Sure.
You said that you're gonna have some meals. Do you have a partnership? Have you made any alliances about the meals, or you're just, it's gonna be,
We have
staff.
we have some relationships with folks that oversee, do fundraising around meals and stuff.
at Food Bank? At
Daily
Food Bank.
Bread.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have a really good working relationship with them.
oh, thank you.
So that's just
Interesting.
one, but that's just one. We need
Right.
several. Yeah, we need
Yeah.
we need several, so yeah, that's definitely in the mix.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay?
Exciting,
Have a good evening.
thank you. Yeah, that's what we're looking for.
Okay, moving. What I'd like is for people who are here, please just introduce yourselves and tell us. Just your name, say hello.
They've all done it already?
No,
No,
that's what she said. My name's Elisa Nicotin. I'm a city planner and a partner in an architecture firm. We've done a bunch of affordable housing, now we're doing more market rate housing, and other things like right now I'm trying to get entitlements for opioid treatment clinics in Vallejo and Richmond, which makes getting housing development approved look easy.
You
And-
serve on the police review.
and I'm here tonight because Buna and Steve came, I'm on the police review commission, and they came to visit, and I realized that there's actually a cross-pollination that needs to happen, between the police review commission and your commission. So I came to, see what you do, and I'm taking notes and,
providing some reflection back to the PRC on what's happening and what the coordination might be.
Thank you. Our next item actually kind of,
Wait,
you know,
tomorrow.
fits right in.
You got, we
Oh,
don't get.
sorry. I'm getting so used to seeing the two of you here. It's like such a happy moment.
Yeah, I'm Ron with the Berkeley Bipolar Support Group. I'm just continuing to come to see what's going on here and see ways to maybe work with other groups that work with you guys.
And I can speak also.
Mhm.
My name is Andrew Phelps. I was the first I joined this commission about '86, and I was the first client to be the chair of this commission. I did it for 3 years, and the fact that it's called a commission instead of a board was my signature. And I've been an activist ever since, so I do a lot more work. I still live in Berkeley, but I do a lot of work in the Silicon Valley. So I'm working to build the mental patients and the struggle to overcome oppression in that context.
Thank you.
I could talk more, but you've got lots to do.
So we decided that we would have an open discussion, and maybe possible action, but I don't think that will happen tonight, on the role of police in providing mental health services using crisis intervention and de-escalation methods. And this came out of having attended that meeting, and I stayed the entire time till the end. And there was some discussion around when the police goes out and does crisis intervention and uses de-escalation strategies, is that mental health? And if it is, then it really isn't under the purview of the Police Review Commission. So it was a very, very interesting take by the commission based on what their charter is and what their charge is to, and it was, you know, it was an interesting discussion because those of us who are in mental health see crisis intervention and de-escalation and that piece that our police folks provide on the street or in people's homes or wherever they're asked to show up and help, is mental health. So if they're providing mental health services, then this commission really does need to look at how they do it, how well they do it, how deep that goes, the partnership with Berkeley Mental Health, the partnership with other people, the partnership with the community that lives here. So this is our opportunity to begin that discussion. While that particular discussion has been going on, you know, for a long time, some of the things that people have looked at is the amount of money that the police department spends on providing these services, and can they be provided in a different way, and can mental health, CBOs, peers, other people in the community be resourced to be trained and provide some of these services. So recommendations at different times have gone to the city, have gone to the city council, but no action has really been taken. And so I thought I think the word is prudent, but it might be something else in my language, to bring this issue here, because I think it sits with us as a commission. So, open for discussion. Cheryl?
I think we need to take PD out of the equation, period, and have more of a 24/7 mental health crisis working. Because often, from what I hear, they escalate the situation. People end up dead, you know. So I would like to see 24-hour crisis mobile unit instead of the police.
Shelby?
Well, I can agree with Cheryl that it'd be good to kind of remove it from the police. But for the police to say that their role is not a mental health role is like cutting off half of your body and saying, I'm just going to take care of part of it. You can't really separate it. And something so ignitive as police with citizenry, they have to be trained. They have to be sensitive to how to treat people. Right now, treating the homeless, I've heard it's very rough. They're, waking up people at 3 a.m. and hauling their motorhomes with people in it, sleeping. Sometimes sick people, older people. So, the need for the mental health training is gotta continue. Gotta continue.
I think I think in order to change the role of the police when they're dealing with people on the street or anybody with mental health issues, when they get the call, requires an enormous amount of new training. Every time there's a shooting, and I'm sure everybody here has read this, they will say they follow protocol. And protocol now in this country for police is to shoot. Is to shoot, not to shoot to maim, not to shoot to subdue, it is to shoot to kill. That is a protocol in this country. It didn't always used to be that, and I don't know where along the way it became that over the past years. On the other hand, we've all read about situations where they did not shoot to kill, where they did not shoot to maim. Where they only shot to subdue, but the majority is to shoot to kill. So the most that we can do in Berkeley, in Albany also, is to address, one of the things that I think needs to be is to address and therefore that protocol to be changed. And that's gonna be a lengthy process. It's gonna take a lot of time, it's gonna take a lot of meetings, it's gonna take a lot for that to change. But until that changes, where the protocol is not to shoot to kill, no matter what the circumstances, we're gonna continue to have the same problems that we've had. And so I think, I don't know if that's something that this commission can take up in terms of that just focus on that, changing that protocol.
Okay, let me try to get us back. So at least, as long as I've been here, our police have played a role on our streets in terms of interacting with people that are in the streets. At least I've seen that since 1971. I believe that those officers, I'd say a few, who are well trained and who really know the art of doing this work, do it well. But there are too few of them. So, majority of the time, as the first person on the scene, it seems like if the city is going to continue to, use police in providing that level of care on our streets, that every officer in the department needs to be trained and then retrained and then and trained in not just the critical intervention technique model, but also trained by community-based folks, trained by people who are in the streets so they can talk about what it feels like when those interventions happen, how they worked out for them. I think we need to do a lot of our own research. We need to bring people in here and listen to them, and then at some point decide what kinds of recommendations we might want to make. So let's take another round and see where we're at. Paul?
Margaret first.
You haven't spoken yet tonight, so I'm gonna let you go first, then Margaret, and then. Yeah. And then Ben.
Yeah.
And I'll come back.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm really glad to see this issue brought before the Mental Health Commission. I think that that is where it belongs, and I think that we can move ahead with some very significant, at least, recommendations and suggestions that I think the community should act on, as well as the council. I think that as a commission, we've had a strong interest in this. As Boona is saying, we've been observing this as individuals as well as commissioners. I want to say this about the police interacting. I want to echo what Boona said, because as few as 5 years ago, it was really rough out there when the police would arrive. And mental health and other people put a heavy emphasis on them getting training. They got the training, and we gradually moved into sort of a transitional period where the police were constantly the first responders. And they grew better and better at it. So good at it that I think the community was happy to see them do that rather than Berkeley Mental Health. And here's why. Because the police were there, when they were trained, they were extremely effective, and more times than not, the biggest complaint I heard from the police is that they were waiting for Berkeley Mental Health to show up. And we waited, and we waited, and we waited. And it's not all Berkeley Mental Health, it could be transport, but the point is that our mental health services were what we were waiting on. And I, as a constant complainer of the police, as a cop watcher, I went through this and realized that actually when trained police were showing up there, whether they were armed or not, which is one of my big complaints, they hop out of a car and they're armed, they were doing a really good job. I was shocked going from what we were at to where we had rolled up to. And it was a good idea, which is why just the other week you guys heard me again saying we need more training. The community as a whole needs more training, not just individuals. We as a community can learn about mental health crisis and be more effective in it. We shouldn't even have to get on the phone until we've gone through a little bit of this. We don't need to call someone to help a neighbor, to help someone in our streets. We don't need help until we need help. But in the conditions that we have now, the first thing that we do is reach for a phone. And we don't need to do that if we get the proper training. And it will do the community as a whole some good to learn about mental health. Mm-hmm. And we don't know enough. And I think, we had the member of the public at the beginning discuss a tragic death recently. I don't know whether that death could have been prevented, but I absolutely do know that more could have been done. Mm-hmm. And that's all that, in terms of that particular instance, that's all that I'm willing to commit to. I don't know. I knew him quite personally. I've known him for over 25 years. I've watched all of this progress to where we were just days ago. More could have been done. I don't know whether we could have saved him. But again, I am really happy, Boona, to see police interactions here at the Mental Health Commission where it really deserves to be, so that we can look at it and really discuss changes. And that's pretty much what I have to say about it. I'm not interested at this point. It's all too painful for me, actually, to say, well, you should have done this or they should have done that. I'm not there at all. I want us to work together as a community so that we have a better community. Thanks. Thank you, Margaret.
No, I hear what you're saying, Paul. You know, I think that it's great to have this open discussion, but I really think that a report that's evidence-based needs to be written. I went to the National Association Citizen Oversight of Law Enforcement Conference for the region 2 weeks ago, and what occurs to me, first of all, has to do with the approach, and are we looking at it as a mental health interaction and process which has mental health interventions, or are we looking more at a punishment process, and what does that mean? It has to be unpacked. That's like a very, very broad area. I mean, the police will be involved. 1/3 of their budget is mental health calls. They are not giving up their funding, and so we have, and they're also needed in some instances, but it's how are people needed and how are people treated. I think the first thing that's really important is a new transparency law came into effect in January. It gives people much more access to police reports. And on one of the panels dealing with that transparency law was the chief of police from Berkeley. And I you know, think he explained what the practicalities are in Berkeley as far as getting police reports. And a lot of those reports go to the city attorney prior to being released, and they're also redacted. But the transparency law is going to have an effect on what information is released, and there may be more of it. And I think, and all the reports are not going through the attorney anyway, so I think that we need to look at some of that data to see what is actually happening out there. I believe CompWatch has seen this for years and witnessed it and videoed it, but it would also be good to see what the documentation says. Because there's one thing to witness something and to video it and to look at what's written down, because they can look very different or they can look similar. I think another thing, and this comes up with the spit hood thing, is the police policy. If you look at that policy, I think we need to work with the language. And we have written a very good action item to go before the city council, and I was saying to Boona this week, because I did the research, there have been several deaths across this country due to spit hoods. There was one that happened not that long ago in the city of Lemoore in California, where there's an undisclosed settlement. I sent Boona another article because there was death in custody in Michigan, I believe, and there was a settlement somewhere, and don't quote me until I get that article out, I think it was $150,000. But I think when you appear before the city council, you need to document every single day. And if there are any criminal charges, police discipline, or settlements that have been disclosed, because then the actual problem becomes reality. I also feel that, and I every day I read articles, several jurisdictions have clinicians that are embedded with the police. And I really think we need to think about that. Because even with the CIT training, if you had a clinician there, potentially that would de-escalate a situation, have people thinking more in terms of mental health and not some kind of punitive response. But I believe that people, what do they have, 40 hours of training?
They don't even, they have 8.
Okay, the one last thing I wanna say is when I was looking at this and researching it, is one of the national criminal justice associations that deals with trust around the police has a thing that's called the reconciliation process, is where minority communities and the police have had histories, long histories of horrible relationships. And the chief of police in Stockton is one of the police chiefs in the United States that has started to enter into this formal process. And I feel like because of everything that's happened here and with Kayla Moore and the lawsuits and everything around it, that there are such bitter feelings around this, that if we don't get some kind of process like that in place and work through what's gone on, and it's still happening, that, you know, I don't know, we have to address that to move forward. So those are kind of the things that through my research I've come up with, but I feel like we need to bring all of us together and put that out there so we can start sorting through. And, I mean, you have, Paul, a lot of, video, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, so,
It's
I don't
almost
know.
stopwatch.
yeah, so, that's all I have to say.
Steve, you can take the commissioners first. Ben, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what Paul said. I also think removing police from the situation would be a beneficial or ideal situation. However, I think it's difficult for police themselves to make the call when they're approaching the potential situation or while dealing with it, because again, I think they're police and they kind of want to do their job, but that's kind of all I have to say about it. They should probably receive more training.
Shelby?
Okay, well, what Paul said is so profound. I mean, we all need to be involved with our community and try to help them out. I've said this before, it isn't a project that's been picked up, but if we really want to be of some service to our citizens and the community, we would have meetings, you know, where people could voice their opinions, and eventually it'll become more action oriented, and us citizens do need to be trained for mental health first aid. So I know it's a big project, but at some point we need to stop that uncertainty that dwells in every person that walks by people and give them a chance to speak and to maybe mobilize together to improve our situation.
I also think that the larger our mobile crisis program gets, and the more hours we're able to provide, that should be also something that we should really be pushing for all the time as a commission. The other thing I wanted to say is, having raised a son who had many moments with the police on the street, in the house, that as a parent, there were times when I was really glad that they were there. You know, I just have to say that. The same is true for having, run a large nonprofit with people that, are at all levels of the mental wellness. There are moments when the police do play a role, especially when there's a threat about violence, whether it's to self or whether it's to someone else.
Yeah.
So I think I want us to have a very robust discussion.
Yes.
And I think it would also be a really good thing for us to, we've heard from our mobile crisis team. Steve keeps us informed on, now the hot team is out there, that's, more street presence in terms of mental health could be much more. That we invite the gentleman who presented from the police side, the sergeant or the lieutenant or the captain.
Yeah, so Ben, if I could just say a couple things. I just wanna, cause you weren't on the commission at the time, it is not new to the Mental Health Commission to have the police department and to look at the intersection in terms of this piece. That is clearly part of the mandate.
Yeah.
And it is something that has happened pretty regularly. It has not happened in the last couple of years. You guys have not invited the police department to come and present on these issues, but I just wanna say.
I'm requesting that we do that next month.
So you can make that request, and I can back that request. I'm not an employee of the police department, so I can't control what does and doesn't happen.
No, but do I make the request through you, or do I make the request directly to the chief?
No, you make the request to Karen, like all communications, you go through the secretary. In terms of the piece, it is of course appropriate for you guys to be looking at those issues. I do wanna say, I've been here for 5 years, and despite many conversations, I do not have a memory of an actual recommendation going to City Council for the City Council to allot more general fund dollars to expand the mobile crisis team. So I've heard much conversation about how good it would be to have more mobile crisis staff, but I've never actually seen the commission take that in the form of something that would potentially cause council to do something differently than they currently do.
Well, this is a new
Absolutely,
administration.
but I just want to say, we've had this conversation many times in terms of this piece, and what prevents us from having more mobile crisis workers is having funding for more mobile crisis workers in terms of those pieces. I also wanted to say a couple other things just in terms of just being clear on the effects. Margaret, I have no idea what percent of the budget the police spends on mental health, and nor does the police, as they have said. The numbers that have been quoted multiple times did not come from,
Let him finish.
from any actual numbers that the police compiled. They came from an estimate from someone who was working inside the police department. That doesn't mean that number is wrong. It could be low, it could be high, but it was strictly an estimate that somebody made. There are no numbers that have ever been reported as to what percent of the calls actually did end up getting designated as
It
mental
has.
health calls.
It's from the Berkeley side, 2015.
I was here during that time. I know where that came from. That came from an officer, Jeff Shannon. And afterwards, as the police chief talked about that at the police commission, that actually wasn't based on any data. It was
Wow.
based on his
Let's not do,
guess in terms of
let's
that piece.
just listen.
I do think,
If that's what the police department is doing.
but I do think that potentially, actually knowing that number does seem like a very important number to know. Like what percent of the time is being spent on mental health calls, because it would be good to know, is it a third? Is it 40%? Is it 50%? Is it 20%? Those are very different numbers, and I am curious
Okay.
about those numbers.
That would help.
In terms of these,
Yeah.
the last thing I wanted to
Pretty
say.
bad when the
I want
dad
us to,
doesn't
I
know the
want us
number.
to not spend a lot of
Sure.
time
But-
on
but-
this
Oh my
commission
God.
doing,
Okay, but I want to say the other
What's
piece I want to say,
happening right now.
and there's this, because Paul to the piece, and I know Paul knows that, and I do appreciate him saying that he's seen improvement in terms of the police response in terms of that piece. But as folks know, we have 4 members on our mobile crisis team. They can be out on one call at a time. Until there's a pickup in that call, they can't go. I do not know, if anyone knows anything different, please let me know. I've not heard complaints that our mobile crisis staff are doing something else as opposed to their jobs.
Nobody has said that.
Tonight has said anything.
Nobody has said
I'm
anything about
responding to
Berkeley mental
Steve.
health.
I don't know why
We've
you're
been
responding to
discussing
something that
a
hasn't
A
even
big
come up.
subject.
Yes, I
Nobody's
just
said
say,
anything.
the solution to there being shorter waits really does have to do with 2 different things. One is, if there was a quicker transport process to the hospital, that would be
Okay.
very important, because that wastes a lot of time, both the police department and mental health clinicians. And then secondarily, it's really by having more staff.
Excuse me.
We got that. This is,
Do I get a word?
I'm just gonna, I have to check our parliamentarian, whether we're able to take comments from the public during the entire meeting, or
You
just
can
at the
decide
beginning.
as a chair.
Yeah,
I
you
can
have
decide as
the.
a chair. Please.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna keep this brief because there's a lot of need for that. I am very struck by what Buna and Paul said, because for me, I have a more abstract way of thinking about it. The issue is culture change. And we have to change the culture, and you're both speaking very strongly to the issues involved in that. And I am deeply impressed. Regarding the issues which you brought up and which he tried to follow up on, I worked for the last 15, 16 years for the Coalition for Justice Accountability in San Jose, and we have slowly built a culture of changing the way the police behave. We have a beloved community from the NAACP that actually teaches the language between the police and the Afro-American community and others in a way that changes the entire way the process happens. In other words, there's a huge effort to reorganize the police behavior. And that's not done so much up here, but there's pieces of it. And the final comment I would make is that there is speaking as a person who's sort of a psychologist type, I belong to Psychologists for Social Responsibility, and our new president next year is Daniela Kantarova, who works at the Wright Institute and spends her life working on police intervention issues. So you might actually even try to bring in Daniela.
Okay, so, I would like to close this item, and I will make a request to Karen and Cheryl, sorry. I
That's
didn't
okay.
see you. That's fine.
So, yeah, I mean, training's always good, and I have seen like a really excellent interaction with the police. And a guy, I don't know what his deal was, but he was laying in the middle of the street, not in the middle, like in the bus stop, in the street, just laid out flat. And
so I couldn't drive by and like let that happen. It was on Cedar and San Pablo at the bus stop at night. You couldn't even see him. It was a black man in dark clothes. So and the cop, when they came, he knew his name, he knew where he lived, he knew everything about him. He knew that the person that he lived with was looking for him, and he was kind of disordered. He knew how to like lift him, because, I was with my husband and we didn't know what to do, and so, but he knew, he's like, here, you can help me, and he's like, lift your left foot, lift your right foot, he knew exactly how to get this guy to, anyway, so, more training is great, but I think the police should not be the first person that interacts. They need to be like as a backup in case they need them. And then like, the ambulance, I don't know, I've been hearing some serious issues with 5150's ambulance rides, and just ambulance rides in general aren't safe for individuals in crisis. So, and actually police interaction, we know either. Just yesterday, or I don't know when it was recently, in Sacramento with the spit hoods on a 12-year-old.
I heard that, yeah.
I mean, that was ridiculous. So, and he didn't even have a mental crisis, So, and then also, with the SB 1421, yeah, everything's gonna be redacted, and it's what continuing learning. But, currently they don't even they're not capturing all the data. They're supposed to start capturing the data. I mean, with the cameras now, it'll be more helpful, but, they're not documenting stuff, they're not documenting use of force. They're not documenting these things that might come in. So like I just recently heard like there's been no use of force. Nobody's died. Kayla Moore died, that wasn't even, so they're not being transparent. So I think that, I don't know. I just wanted to say those things. And, let me think. Definitely need to change the culture. Because, and right now, with the racial profiling, that's still happening, So, and it's, it might not lead to an arrest or a ticket, but, some black people are getting followed, So it's just like, that, the whole culture needs to change. But I just think, yeah, we do need to increase the mobile crisis unit and maybe have, an officer that's completely 100% trained. And currently the de-escalation, I believe, is only 8 hours when it should be 40 hours. So they need to start implementing the 40 hours.
So the steps that at least I'm seeing are that, let's start with the presentation by the very people who actually have to respond to these calls and go, they didn't lose my train of thought completely tonight. Good thing you're here, and be as informed as we can possibly be in conversations with the Police Review Commission as to what they have done so far, what role they think they're gonna play moving forward in terms of oversight. They don't have real oversight over the police department, but their mandate and role. And get informed, do our research, talk with our own staff, get the best information that we can out of our own staff, and then get to what recommendations can we really get something out of. Now, in terms of increasing the funding for the mobile crisis unit, now is the moment to really start talking about it and have that recommendation in front of the council, even though we'll miss this budget cycle probably, but it might get, sent to some other place where there might be a pot of money. And that we could do this in about a 3-month period to at least get one solid recommendation in front of council saying, we need as much mobile crisis and trained people in the street, so that the first response can be with someone other than police officer.
I would also like to see the policies,
Okay.
because their language, from what I read on this, seemed very loose to me.
So
And I would
if we
like to
make
know-
the list,
Okay.
not of now, we'll have a whole month before the questions.
That's a good point.
That's a good thing. We don't have to do everything tonight. So does that sound reasonable to folks? That we start the process today, we start having, and we might even, another action we might wanna take is actually create a subcommittee, to work on only this piece, so that then we can bring something back to the whole commission at the June meeting. So, if the commissioners want to create that subcommittee, then now is the moment to make that motion. Otherwise, I don't know which
Well,
subcommittee
you
is gonna
can
be
put
dealing
it
with this.
under accountability as police accountability.
No, I'm not gonna do that.
Okay.
Because the way we've set up accountability is, I don't wanna add having also now the
Okay.
police department somehow being, no. But,
It's a budget thing.
I think the accountability committee can deal with the budget side, that side,
Right.
but in terms of making recommendations on the decreased role of police and the increased role of mobile crisis and mental health and peers, community members, community-based organizations trained to respond.
Well, it's mental health crisis management.
Yeah, whatever we wanna call it, but it would be nice to have a very focused subcommittee that can get this done quickly, so we can get something in front of the council. So, their bells are ringing that we're on this, we want this, we're serious, find the money. Without saying take it out of the police department's budget, because that, I think, will just fall on dead ears. And I'm not very interested in taking things to the council that will fall on dead ears. Not to say that any of them have dead ears, but.
So, yeah, I heard that 35% of the police budget is mental health. But also, we also have an opportunity in the fall to get it into the AAO.
Yeah.
So 3-month timeline is a good timeline. And, yeah, the PRC has absolutely no teeth or oversight on the police, and like I said, their transparency, I know like the PRC has asked the police department for several things that they have not received. We have been so as a council. So, it's just,
I don't know what makes us think that they can respond to our requests, but, we'll do our best. So, on whether we form a subcommittee or not, what are the wishes of the commission tonight?
I think part of it is what do you want done by the
I
next
just said
meeting?
exactly what I thought we could get in front of the council in 3 months. We could do that here? I'm just asking if we need a subcommittee. If we don't, we'll do it as a commission, but then I'd like for a few of us to at least bring some kind of, thought through, we'll get at the work plan, and some of this is in the work plan. But not another open discussion, but a presentation from the police department, and then a very focused discussion around some key questions that we form. Like, how are we going to get this money approved? What is that gonna look like, in terms of how do we take it to?
If you don't have a subcommittee, it's gonna be very hard to use your committee time well.
I know.
Because you can't have conversations about this outside of here with
Right.
each other
Right,
without it being a subcommittee
Right.
meeting.
right.
So if you don't have a subcommittee, then your committee meetings will be sent up thinking about the questions you want to ask, as opposed to having the subcommittee think about that
Mhm.
and being able to use your committee time to have the police present.
Yeah.
Um, I totally support having a subcommittee for the exact reasons that Steve just mentioned. We have a lot of business as a commission, and as we, regarding the profiling work that the PRC did, it took us a while. It took us over a year, but we got it done, and it has already been making a difference in terms of taking a different look at BPD and racial profiling. And I think the same thing can happen here regarding a different way of looking at police interaction and mental health, as well as community interaction and mental health. I just don't know what to call it.
Police accountability.
No, it should be focused on mental health.
Yes, it should be focused on mental health.
Because every time the
Police
police comes
accountability.
up, it's a mental health crisis. It's the police, it's not, every time the police comes up.
Okay, subcommittee on response to mental health crises in our community.
Yes.
But there's one more consideration you need, which is that 25 years ago, they did the same thing in Berkeley. They set up a major funded process where the mental health and the police worked together on an intervention, and eventually that broke down. So you need to be able to understand the history of why it worked for a bit and why it didn't work very clearly. Welcome to Berkeley.
What about mental health crisis response?
Okay. Make a motion?
I will move that the Mental Health Commission create a subcommittee referred to as Mental Health Crisis Response Subcommittee.
Second.
So, create a subcommittee referred to
As Mental Health Crisis Response. We're doing response right now. Prevention. Right.
It's
I have a
Margaret's
question.
motion and it's Paul's second.
Roll call, please.
Well,
A discussion?
Well, it seems to me that some community members would be very, I don't know, they have a cost involved there, you know, that it's personal or whatever, and I just wanna ask the general question, can some of these subcommittees be open to,
They are open to the public.
yeah, but not just as a observer, but can they be a member of a committee?
No.
If they wanna be,
No.
No,
see?
but they can come and fully participate.
Okay.
We had one meeting that we had, folks from the public come and they
Okay.
were just treated
Okay,
just
I'm
like
gonna
another
keep that in mind,
commission.
thank you.
You can
Police
have,
review did the same thing.
Can you hold up? Let me, is it to this item?
it was just what you were talking about, and that is that you can have another subcommittee join your subcommittee, like from Police Review Commission if you wanted.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that question. I know that there was a subcommittee at one point working with the Homeless Commission, a subcommittee from the Homeless Commission on the issues of, property, how it was taken, how it was dealt with. Currently, do you have a subcommittee that kind of falls under this?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
But I'm relatively new.
Okay, so the motion was to create a subcommittee referred to as Mental Health Crisis Response. It was motioned by Margaret and second by Paul. And Erlinda? Yes. Buna?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Margaret?
Yes.
Shelby?
Yes?
Paul?
Yes.
And Ben?
Okay, now I'm gonna ask for volunteers.
And you can only have 3. 'Cause your
Yes.
committee's 7.
Yeah.
I mean, I wanna volunteer, but I think there's 4 of us who wanna do it.
So Margaret? Paul?
I could be a substitute.
I don't know how that works, Cheryl.
If somebody can't go, I
Yeah,
can go.
you can have
Yeah.
someone that comes if someone doesn't go.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we never know until the meeting whether somebody's gonna be there or not.
Well, if we need an, Shirley building,
I'll be the third. Same thing.
I just don't wanna take another
And
meeting on.
you can be months.
Or anyway.
So you need to make a motion to appoint these people to the
Right.
Yeah, so can we get that motion to this side of the table, please?
A motion to appoint Margaret Paul and Bill to the aforementioned subcommittee, and Bill as a third
So,
As a sub,
sub.
I'll second.
So take your time, make sure you get all the words.
Okay. So, the motion,
It's easier for us to speak, it's harder to write.
I know.
So it's okay to say what people know.
I motion to appoint Margaret Paul. Governor.
and Bruna,
And me, Cheryl as a sub.
And seriously, cop watch.
To the previously aforementioned,
Can you speak a little louder? I'm sorry.
sorry, to the previously aforementioned subcommittee.
Just for clarity, because it stands alone, just make it to the mobile crisis response subcommittee.
Okay, to the mobile crisis subcommittee.
There you go, that's all set.
No, it's mental health response subcommittee.
Yeah. Mental health response.
Mental.
We don't wanna be too obvious that it's about getting more money.
Right, and also it's like somebody.
We wanna be very obvious about that.
All right, so the motion was to appoint Margaret, Paul, and Bruna, and then Cheryl as a
Sub.
sub to previous aforementioned to the mental health response subcommittee.
You can take out the previously aforementioned.
Okay.
Okay, and we, as soon as we can get this scheduled and noticed, so expect an email from me tomorrow.
So Ben made the
And then we can
motion,
have-
and who seconded?
I did.
Second?
Yeah.
All right, I'm
And
ready
then
for
we'll
vote.
go to roll call, please.
Okay, Relinda,
Yes.
Bona,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Margaret,
Yes.
Shelby,
yes,
Paul,
Yes.
and Ben.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Discussion, possible action on draft mental health commission work plan. As that, at the last, meeting, everyone got a copy of the annual report. So what we have done is taken the annual report and started to put it together so that we can develop the work plan and actually submit it to the council, because our 2019 work plan, I want us to be the first commission that gets our work plans in. So, what we've done so far is, at least taken all the priorities that were in the annual report and sorted them out. The next steps are to then figure out which committee will deal with which of the items. And if you go to page
does anyone want to
two,
see this
you will
worksheet?
see at the very top that it says that all these bullets that we have listed, these are the things we want to review, evaluate, and then report back to the commission from various subcommittees. Some of these we might have already done or very close to getting done, and might just be check marks. And we haven't yet quite figured out how we want to lay this out. One of the suggestions that has been made is that we lay it out where we list the priority, then we list which subcommittee it's going to go to, what the action will look like, report to the commission, and then recommendation to council. So we're hoping that on many of these things, the first recommendations might be, I see your hand, Margaret, might be to the department, and some recommendations might actually be directly to the council. And hopefully we will work in partnership with the departments to see, which ones might actually, get us some leverage at the council, because they also have experience working with our council in the same way that we do. So if each one of you would please just look at the list and see if there is anything else that you see that isn't here that you would like this commission to at least review, evaluate, research, and report on in the rest of this year and all of 2020. Marty?
I'm just gonna say that this was done in a very general way, and these are gonna be unpacked into action items, and they're gonna be very specific. And so if you, like, let's say it says, access to mobile crisis inter, well, if you think of certain things under that that need to go there as an action item, we did it this way so if anybody can give us, you know, what you would wanna see in it. Cause it's gonna be in a chart and it's gonna say priority, subcommittee, and action items. So it's gonna be broken out.
And for the new subcommittee that we've just formed, there are a bunch of items in here that subcommittee will
Yeah.
be looking at almost immediately.
Yeah,
One,
particularly under goal
1
1.
minute?
that's all I want. Yeah, I was speaking before about the role of psychology in actually becoming an ally. And CISR, like I said, they have their new president is a person at the Wright Institute, Daniela, and they have a major conference in November about multicultural issues. And in general, you should put in there some kind of connecting process.
I will call them as one of the early founders of the
Thank
Wright
you.
Institute. Because I think they would be a presentation from them would be a really good thing for us to hear on this commission. They've come a long ways. Moving on, none of the subcommittees met this month for various reasons. But there is one request that we would like to make to the department is that, Steve, if you would speak with your staff and see what date works for them where they can be helpful in putting together our feedback group that we've been talking about.
Which
That we
staff?
would then, you know, staff who will help transport, staff who will, you know,
There's a lot of staff,
so would you pick the date? Because we don't know, you know,
you're not gonna be able to talk with all the staff, they're doing their jobs. I think the people you wanna talk to are Jamie and Nancy.
yeah, I've talked to Nancy, I gave her all the materials I had and emailed her, and unfortunately haven't heard from her.
I'm not sure she
But I
knows
was-
exactly what the ask is.
The ask is there a day that is better for consumers to come together and meet? Because we don't wanna pick a day where you have a division meeting and nobody's available to help us.
So that's, and when you say that, consumers, which
Berkeley
program?
Mental Health Adult Services.
So all of the possible treatment teams
Yes.
could all come together in terms of those pieces?
Yes.
Sure. What month are you looking for a date
We'll
on?
look, do we meet in July?
No, we
Yes.
don't meet in August.
We don't meet in August.
So it would be in July, mid-July, would be great.
You would wanna have a date to hold the focus group
Mhm.
in mid-July.
Mhm.
Okay, so to plan that,
Mhm.
we would have to set that date super soon,
Super soon.
because then there's a lot of, we need to know the format, need to know what folks are getting, and then we
Mhm.
need to coordinate and get a space where they're gonna be meeting in,
Right.
in terms of the pieces.
And
Those
the-
issues get worked out with the city attorneys, and with the,
Yes.
did that work out?
It didn't work out the way I would have liked it to work out.
Okay,
What this will be
sure, so you want a date
an
in
announced
mid-July?
meeting of the site subcommittee. And the agenda item will be to receive input from consumers.
So it's a public meeting?
It's a public
So it
meeting.
can't be at our mental health center?
No, it won't be it can't be at a mental health clinic. So I was thinking lifelong. They
Well,
have
then
a couple of,
they need the date, cause they're the ones that have to say what day they can do it.
okay, so
And
maybe.
then we if they could give us like a couple, if you could get a couple possible times from them,
Okay.
then we could figure out. Essentially, what I would say is, what's gonna work well is the middle of the day. People have to bring people there, and they have to bring people home, so middle of the day is the best time to have a meeting. Middle of the week is probably the best time of the week to have a meeting, because that allows folks to remind folks on Monday, Tuesday if they're coming, and folks are not, it's not towards the weekend in terms of, if I were to pick a date, I would pick like a Wednesday, at some point in the middle of the day, and then maybe you guys were serving food or something, which might be
Yeah.
attractive to people.
Yeah, we did talk about stipends and food, and that
Yeah.
both seemed to be,
So that's if you could get a, because I think the space is gonna be the key piece, because someone has to be able to reserve that, and then I think we can work around it. And then if there's 2 maybe possible weeks, then that would probably be plenty to make sure that it's not like a giant training that day or something like that.
okay,
Because that would really be the only thing that would
okay.
create an issue.
I will sit quiet tonight, pick the dates, and, send them to you, because Karen's out of town, and then if you could call Lifelong and see if they can give us one of the conference rooms and on both of those days if needed, and then we'll
So
see
you
from
email
there.
it to me?
Yes.
And Lifeline I'm pretty sure they can have a public meeting, right?
Because our subcommittee public meeting would be at Lifelong,
Perfect.
and that's how it would be posted.
Right, but they can allow members of the public to come in, they don't have HIPAA concerns as well as a medical provider.
I will ask them to.
Just make sure about that, please.
Yeah, otherwise
There's a room the room on the first floor at City Hall
yeah,
is fairly big.
that's the second thing I was thinking about, was that maybe the simplest thing would be to just do it at Cypress.
Or
Because first I thought Cypress was too small, but then I was at a meeting there the other night, and there's
It's
25
pretty
people in
big.
there.
You're not gonna get more than that many people
Yeah.
to show up for this. I would recommend that, because then you don't have to deal with and then I can just look for
Okay.
a time. So you're looking for mid-July,
Noon to 2,
12 to 2. Yeah, I'll look at Cypress.
so you'll look at Cypress?
Yes, Cypress is easy because people can just go in and
Yeah.
out, but I'll look at the 6th floor as well.
I don't think you should have it at noon, because a lot of the clients go to the lunch program. So make it like 1:30
we're
so they can
serving-
get there.
If we're serving
We're,
lunch.
if we're serving lunch.
Oh, that's lovely. Maybe that's gonna attract
I think it might
people.
be.
I guess it would.
I'm gonna
I
say,
guess it
yes.
would.
Based on
Okay.
my
It would be a good
experience,
substitute,
I'm gonna
yeah.
say,
We actually are very close to this happening, so let's just,
so mid-July,
Mid-July.
ideally a Wednesday, 12 to 2, and I'm gonna look for reserve the Cypress. Got it.
and then, we'll get the agenda done fairly quickly, even though we don't have to, so that your clinicians and people that, so your staff can just say, hey, this meeting is happening in July, if you would like to attend, this.
Absolutely, sure, yeah. Yes, and then I'll have a conversation with Nancy about Jamie. It's gotta be really clear to our staff what you want them to be doing, because they're
We
not.
want transportation and help with food. Those are the two things.
So,
And stipends, that would be your decision, right?
well, so we have
Or gift cards.
there's a stipend policy,
I
so
meant
we
gift
we
cards.
follow the stipend policy
Okay.
that's in place in terms of that. We can certainly, I think we have sufficient funds to do the lunch, but that's a bunch of work, which you guys might need to do the work on, not us, in terms of that piece, but there's money, I think we could allot money for lunch, I don't see any issue with that. And then I think the bigger issue is, so I just wanna be really clear here, like, our case management staff, like, have a caseload of 1 to 20, or 1 to 30, or 1 to 35, as you sort of see in terms of these pieces. Folks can't go get like 6 people. They can get, and they have to be doing their jobs, so that there's not like this unbelievable amount of transport that we can do to get folks to be there. In terms of that piece, I just wanna set realistic expectations, because people are actually treating people
At this
at this
point,
time.
my realistic, having just attended the May's Mental Health Month
Yeah,
and looked around and seen how few consumers were there, that if we get 5 to 7
so when
with
we,
your help, that would be great.
so when we have a consumer meal,
Mhm.
and we have a thing, we usually have like 150 or 200 consumers. can't do an activity in the evening and expect consumers to show up. It's just not a, that's a community
Yeah,
event.
let's just do our best,
Okay.
and if 3 show up, we'll have longer conversations.
That sounds great, and it's open to any open adult clients,
Yes,
but only open.
only open.
Great, we will do outreach, we'll do our absolute best. I guarantee you'll get more than 3 to 5.
Thank you.
Probably won't get 25, but we can get you more than 3 to 5 folks
That,
in terms of that piece. Sarah, I'm sure we can do better
thank
than that.
you. Cheryl,
I'm changing the subject,
okay?
cause I was looking at this and I don't know, and just something that I wanna think about is, do you know if like, the 911 people have mental health first aid?
So there is the folks who are on dispatch for Berkeley Police are trained specifically, my understanding, what I've heard from the police, that they've had trainings on, and the same trainings or similar trainings to the police department staff have had about mental health and about mental health de-escalation in terms of that. That's all I know about what's in place for the Berkeley dispatch. And again, I'm saying this is what I heard the police say, not like it's something I participated in or I'm able to say, but that's what I've heard them say, is that they had some specific training which sounded great for the dispatch folks in terms of doing that. And they're the ones that are picking up the phone calls when people call 911.
What about 311?
I don't know anything about that. I would assume they would, but I do not know.
Well, I think that's, and then rent board as well.
I don't know anything about the rest.
So those are the 3 areas where I think we need to make sure that they get more training. They should be in the same with the police, I feel. Cause they need to have de-escalation, because going back to William Barclay, 300, I know for a fact, because I was there at the rent board and went to talk to them about him. And it was great when I was talking about Mr. Barclay, but when I said 300, when they went and got the file and saw it was 300, total shift. You could see it, you know? And then that happened like 3 times. My son went with them, they were treating him differently. And I've heard from phone calls from constituents that's happened. So I think that's something that this body should be addressing, as well as making sure 311, I've heard kind of similar stories, and 911 similar stories. So I think we just need to, as this body, to address those 3 things as well.
Thank you.
And
I just wanted to check.
I wanna add that Section 8 agency that used to be
Berkeley.
inside Berkeley,
Authority?
that they have
The
a lot of
housing.
clients and I think they handle the Shelter Plus program.
No,
Are you
the city
talking
of
about-
Berkeley handles the shuttle bus.
Are you talking about
Okay.
the
I'm
house?
talking about that agency that had the office,
The house. Berkeley couldn't help.
no, around the corner. They do Section 8.
The
It was
housing
the
not-
housing
authority.
authority.
Pardon me?
The housing authority. Oh, we could put them.
Oh,
into
authority,
this-
yeah. When you
Yes, put them
said
into this
rental
as well.
board, that's a
That's
separate,
Separate,
thing.
yeah, rent stabilization.
yeah,
board.
housing authority, that's the
Well,
group,
maybe we could look at that too, because it's the same, similar,
yeah.
you know, so those 4 things.
You know,
then.
That brings a topic, in our packet last month, there was the letter from Kim Nemero about, someone that had some issues, some mental issues. Apparently she didn't get any support, and I guess the person was evicted. But anyway, it really spoke to the fact that there's an empty spot to support people in the eviction process, or pre-eviction, you know, so it doesn't get to that point. And there's a lot of issues involved.
The only other thing I have on subcommittees is I'd like to know how people's individual recruiting is going on to get.
Could you speak up?
Yeah, to get more members to the commission. We have some consumer seats that are open, and we have I believe we have 4 or 5 seats still open, and we have 2 applications, so we still have 3 more seats open.
I went out to Pierce today, and at that, well, it had at least 20 people there, and there was nobody from Berkeley or Albany.
And I spoke with someone today who's on the Berkeley POCC and said, please don't spread the word.
You know, on the 5th and 6th, there's a mental health first aid, I think, that's going on, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna go to it or not, but if I do, I will ask.
5th and 6th of June.
Oh, and the other thing I thought about too is, because I was up at the Berkeley Free Clinic, there's a lot of students up there who are like really bright and, you know, engaged. And I did email one about something totally different, but I could send her, to pass that around.
Belinda?
What's the status of the young lady that Shirley was recommended? Do you know anything about
She
that?
has not made an application yet.
I was gonna call her too.
Could you review the spaces that are, need
I
to be
can't
filled?
off the top of my head, but we can get them emailed.
Okay.
So if we could just find out how, you know, which spots are open, we can email it again. And yeah.
You know, I could send it to
Yeah,
maybe in
some
an
of the
old packet.
leadership that was there today and see if they can send it to people.
Do we have a flyer?
Yes.
Can we send that again?
I think Karen sent it to all the stakeholders, and maybe we just need to send it out again.
Well, can we get one?
Yeah, we did get one.
I know, but can we
Get it again?
send it, yeah.
Sure.
With the application.
So, you got that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you so much.
Or can we get it both with the application and the
Mhm.
flyer? Okay. Sorry.
Next item is discussion and possible action on commissioner appointment to the Berkeley Mental Health Planning Committee for staff training on LGBTQ, people of color, and mental health substance abuse.
I would like clarification on that.
Mm-hmm.
When you say planning committee
It's
for staff
planning.
training,
It's the planning committee within the city of Berkeley, within the department, correct, Steve?
No, I don't
No?
actually know what this is
So
talking
I
about.
don't, is
What
this,
it was
is
is
it your item,
Barbara
Margaret?
came and met here.
Yep.
And the next day she sent an email
Mhm.
and said she wanted to establish a planning committee and asked us to appoint somebody.
Fair enough. I was not aware of that. That makes a lot of
You
sense.
think you were
Margaret.
copied on it?
I get a lot of emails. I do not remember the full
Well,
content of that
you were
one.
copied on it.
It's
I
6 and
believe I was. It does
And I
ring a bell.
hope this is
Find out.
not what you got, cause she asked
I-
for input.
I do
Okay.
have a vague memory of that, Margaret. That sounds right. You have an excellent memory of it. Sounds good. I don't know what I'm talking about. Sounds like it's very clear.
okay.
Yes.
Is this a committee to formulate, to organize and implement a staff training?
So
Which
oftentimes,
staff? Which
Yeah.
staff?
so oftentimes what happens is when Barbara's gonna plan a training, she pulls together a group of folks to help
Okay.
plan the training.
Yeah.
Sounds
For
like that's
City
what
of
we're talking
Berkeley.
about. It's a planning
Yes.
group
Okay,
for a
all right,
training.
all right.
Sharon?
I would like to see, I would like to, as a council member, to convene a first aid mental health training. But I need your guys' help, of course, but as my office to do it, is that possible?
So I gave you the contact stuff for the
Yeah, I
folks who
know.
are doing it. So if you have a specific request, like I'd like to do one in my district, or I'd like
Yeah.
to do the piece, send it to Tenley, and
Okay.
then we can figure out what our staffability is, and I'm sure we can do it.
Okay, that would be great.
I do wanna volunteer for this because I've been on this bandwagon for 2 years.
I would agree, Margaret.
Yep.
And we're finally seeing things happen and
So,
I have
can,
like 2 years.
can
of
we have a
research.
motion?
Have a motion to, appoint Margaret to that planning committee, subcommittee, or whatever it is.
Planning committee for staff training on LGBTQ,
Yes.
people of color, now, you got it right here, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so, to appoint Margaret to
How
planning.
many people is it, Margaret, just two?
No,
Just
you
one.
can have,
Just
no,
one.
you can have 2 if you wanna be on it.
Well,
Yeah.
no, I mean, when you look at this,
I could be
we
a
got
sub.
a lot, if you were a sub.
No, but you could
could
Barbara would
maybe
love
pop
that,
in.
so.
Yeah.
It would be lovely if you came, I would really appreciate it. Can
Well, 'cause
we,
there's-
we can appoint you.
It would be fine,
That'd be fine, yeah,
more the merrier.
yeah.
Yeah, I would like to.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it
So
says
I would
people
really
of color,
represent the
so it would
people
be
of color.
great. And the people of color from the commission would be on that started it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm losing it.
Makes sense.
So let me try and finish
Hold on,
this.
let Andrea
So
read the
the
motion back.
I know.
motion was to appoint Margaret
And Cheryl.
And Cheryl.
and Cheryl to planning committee for staff training on LGBTQ, people of color, and mental health substance use.
Sure.
See what I just do. Okay.
Call it another meeting. Take the roll call.
All right,
Do
and
you have- who's
it was
motion?
motion by Margaret.
No, motion by Cheryl
Cheryl.
and seconded by,
I'll second.
okay, Belinda seconded.
Okay, and Erlinda,
Yes.
Bona,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Margaret,
Yes.
Shelby,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
and Ben.
Yeah.
Okay, Steve, you've got 13 minutes.
All right.
to make a report.
Well, I'm actually gonna, I submitted a report and I'm
Yes.
happy to answer any questions about it, but before talking about that, I also wanna, take a moment to recognize the passing of 300.
Yes.
He was a very sweet man, he was very kind to me, and I thought what you said was exactly right. Berkeley has to be able to do better than this.
Thank you.
I can't talk about any of the things, but the issues that get in the way of helping somebody who is in the streets, who doesn't see themselves as having a mental health issue, there has to be a better solution to that than what's in place now. It is a tragedy that he passed, and just wanna share in the sadness about that. Is a very sad thing. I also want to thank the Mental Health Commission members who came to the May's Mental Health event and participated in planning it. Thank you. We appreciated the whole division appreciated your participation in the planning, and certainly your enthusiastic participation. That was really nice. Other than that, you guys had some very specific requests, and so I tried my best to respond to those in the report. The one piece I want to highlight is that good news that one of the issues that we have that was identified, excuse me, in the equity committee, which was that the number of enrolled open clients that are female was significantly underrepresented of the number of Medi-Cal recipients who are female, which ideally we want to match our Medi-Cal population. And then the group spent a lot of time trying to dig into what could be causing that, came up with multiple recommendations about things to do that we put in place. And while we're not all the way there, this month's report, I compared to last year's report on the same month, our largest treatment team, CCT, and we have a much better or more representative balance of males and females that are open clients. And so it's gratifying to see that we can have a group that can look at an issue, identify an issue that we did not know we had, propose possible solutions, we can put those solutions in place, and we can make some progress on that. And that's exciting, it's a very positive thing, and other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the report.
I'm glad you wrote out, I just saying, I really appreciate writing out all this peer stuff, because so many people have asked about it, that potentially this could be given to them as well. I don't know.
I think that, again, for folks who are very frustrated with the situation, it's not a matter of the facts, just like it's not so simple to get someone into care. So it's not so much about the information as it is built up frustration. That's my perspective, over time, about a system that hasn't served folks well.
I did have one question about it. There are people who want to be paid by Berkeley Mental Health as peers, but there's a very formal, like, peer specialist certificate. How does that interface with?
Well, so actually, a bill just passed to
Right.
actually create this. This does not
Right.
exist.
Well, it passed in the Senate.
Yes, so it's not law yet.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually exist. There is no peer certification in California.
That's for California.
There's peer certification in other states. There is no, but there are multiple peer training programs in the area that have curriculums that is probably very likely to be what will become the peer certification training standards that will go in place. So there are many folks who do a peer training program in Alameda County, many Berkeley residents, Berkeley clients that do that, and we typically take interns from that program so they can get a work-like experience, and we get the benefit of having some additional peers that are helping to connect with consumers in our community. That is a intern program that we have done most years, and we will be doing this year as well.
Do you know the
Cheryl,
time?
questions from Steve? I just wanted to say that you answered every question and gave us extensive materials.
Well, I appreciated that you got, that I really appreciated the time for it, so thank you. When you get them early, it gives me a chance to.
I'm gonna try to do this as early as possible, so that you can do this excellent job.
Cheryl has a question.
So, I just wanted to take a moment to talk about 300 again.
And mention tomorrow, please, because
Oh, yeah.
this is being.
Tomorrow, at 7 PM at 2100 Martin Luther King Jr. Way, on the steps, we will be having a memorial service, for 300. It's just sad because, I mean, now that he's gone, you realize all the people that really loved and cared for him, and I don't think he realized that, you know? And to me, that's heartbreaking. I mean, my heart's kind of broken because of his passing. And, I don't know, he just got to me really hard, like he was like a real family member. And I think that's how it is for a lot of people. And he didn't realize that, you know, and I hope now he does, because I know he's with us all the time, but, it's just this really super sad situation that I feel like the city of Berkeley failed him. I think Berkeley Mental Health failed him. I think the rent board failed him. And, you know, I just think it's a super sad situation because he was alone, you know, and he didn't have any support. And, he was just such a beautiful person and, really kind and super smart and articulate. And I spent a lot of times, I mean, I met him when I was campaigning, and like when he was so excited when he met me, and he's like, "Oh, you're Cheryl Bonita?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he knew who I was, and like he passed out my cards, and he was just like, and you know, and he watched my bike at the Juneteenth festival, you know, you know, he would call my office like every day and talk to me for hours, and I just put him on speaker, talk to him, and continue working. And I would then, you know, after a while, I'd be like, "Okay, I don't want to hang up on you, you know, don't make me hang up on you, just like, let's sit." And then he would just say goodbye. But you just had to have, I think people don't have patience, and I don't know why I have so much patience, but I do. And that's what I feel like we need to do. I think the city needs to like gather up all its mental health workers, like social workers, psychologists, sociologists, and have some kind of outreach volunteer program, like peer, I don't know, I mean, they're already trained, some of them are licensed, a lot of them are retired and have time. If we could just somehow do some kind of volunteer outreach group to help, you know, since Berkeley Mental Health doesn't have the capacity or the money to get that done, and go around to all these different encampments, because we don't know who's in the encampment or who's homeless or what their issue is. It might not even be that big of an issue, and that he declined so quickly from what I could see, you know, and it was just like super sad. So I think we all need to do better, and that's why I want to have like the mental health training. I think we should have them throughout the city in different districts, so that the community can start like having some more compassion and empathy, because the things that I hear about homelessness and mental health yeah, it's an issue, but, you know, don't just ignore it. Just say hello to someone. Do you know how much the difference that can make in someone's life?
Yes.
You know? So, and I keep hearing people are afraid. You don't have to be afraid, you know? You can't live in fear if you wanna live, you know? So we just have to do better. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, so you said 7
7
o'clock
PM,
at, Wednesday?
21 tomorrow night.
Wednesday? Friday night.
Friday.
Friday night.
Yeah, tomorrow.
Okay.
Which building is it, 2100?
The police building,
2100.
the public.
I was
Oh,
trying not to
safety
say that, but
It's
it's
Well,
on
it's
the
where
yeah.
it was where you
The
got
old
this much.
Berkeley Mental Health and Boss building, we were evicted out of there, so we could have that building.
What's
You
the
would-
address?
you would
It's
feel comfortable
2100
being public
on Martin Luther King Jr. Way, but it's gonna be on the steps, cause that's where I met him, that's where he used to love to hang out,
It was a spot.
and that's where a bunch of people met him for the first time. My son's known him since he was 16,
Paul
16,
and I've known
and
him.
he's 31
Since we
now,
were
you know,
Since we were
and, like, he was in my office and my son came in, he's like, hey, 300, and I was like, huh, what, how do you know him? So, but they were like, you know, and he went to the rent board with him, so he saw firsthand how he was treated as well. And he got them to help him, you know, so,
Yes, please.
So I have a question, sort of a general question. I came across an evaluation of the hot teams, and I think it was, and I'm wondering, did this commission receive that
Yes.
evaluation?
Yes.
So I'd like to get a copy of it. I don't.
it's on the website.
It's on the,
Okay. All right.
If they could mail it out to us, that would be good too. Email it to us.
We did.
it was emailed with the packet,
Oh, okay.
yeah. It was in the
We're
packet.
happy to give more copies. It was a positive
Do it again.
evaluation. We're happy to give out more copies. It was a positive evaluation.
Yeah, they're like.
Yeah, well, if you could email it
Give it
again.
to all the
just
street
get it in
spirits,
the top.
I'll
street
fix
street
that.
vendors.
Absolutely, you can email that to the commission. Yes. We're happy to see you. You can
So
see it
on
again.
that note, can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
So
And
moved.
thank
Oh,
you
we just
for
had-
another excellent.
We just had 2 announcements. We wanted to
Oh,
make.
right, staff announcements.
The first one, we just want to make sure that everyone had a chance to get a copy of the flyer that Barbara Ann, our Berkeley Mental Health, Training and Diversity Multicultural Coordinator, she sent a flyer out regarding the LGBTQ Day of Learning event that's gonna be scheduled for June the 13th. And so, the second announcement is that, Karen will have the MHSA fiscal year 20, annual update. It will be posted Wednesday, May the 29th, so that'll be posted for public review. And then the public hearing for the MHSA fiscal year 20 annual update will be at the Mental Health Commission meeting on June 27th of 2019.
The next meeting.
The next meeting.
So if we can extend for 3 minutes, a motion to extend the meeting for 3 minutes, I can get to the last item.
A motion to extend for 5 minutes.
I second it.
Roll call on that one?
Okay, motion to extend for 3 minutes.
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
It was by Cheryl, seconded by Shelby.
Cheryl and then Shelby. Motion proposed to extend. Okay, so the motion is to extend the meeting 5 minutes. And that was motion by Cheryl and then second by Shelby. And is that, Erlinda? Yes. Buna?
Sorry.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Margaret?
Yes.
Shelby?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Okay, I had to turn the page, so prioritizing agenda items for the June meeting, I think we have a pretty clear agenda from things that came up. So, we'll, Karen, or, depends on when we do this. I don't think we need to prioritize anything, we know we're gonna invite the police, we're gonna have a report from the new committee, we're gonna have a regular
Public
report.
hearing, that has to be the big chunk of the meeting, you know, the public hearing on the MHSA plan,
Okay,
Oh, right.
30 minutes,
at least.
at least, okay.
It's the big public hearing, she's
Okay,
gotta
well-
go through that PowerPoint, you have to have time for all the comments that will be
We'll
there.
set aside like 30 to
45.
45 minutes.
45,
Okay.
and then it maybe be shorter.
What's the
Okay.
date that the draft comes out?
Probably
29?
next Wednesday or something,
She just said
something like that.
29.
Una,
Yes, ma'am.
the invitation to the police, that's not for the June meeting, right?
What?
The invitation to the police, that's for the
Yes.
June meeting? I thought the subcommittee was gonna formulate, questions on this before we met with them.
That might
Well,
make
you have a
sense.
whole
No,
month, right?
no.
Okay,
The
wait.
presentation we want from the police department is the presentation of what they do
Okay,
when they're dispatched.
So,
Then
so,
what happens?
so Boone, just to
That
be
same
clear,
kind.
right, but that wasn't just a presentation, the police review commission sent questions that they
Exactly.
responded and we responded, so you do
I
have to
have
send
those,
something.
I have those questions, so I'll look at those questions. You know, I deleted 632 emails this morning.
Oh,
So
no.
now on purpose, which is just
Oh.
driving me nuts. So now to find that, I have to put in who sent it to me, so.
Are you talking about the CIT person coming?
No. He is, I don't know what his title is.
That wasn't far off. I mean, he's not,
Close enough.
they don't have a Jeff Shannon position anymore.
Really, they
No,
got rid of
They
it.
don't have that position anymore. He's the person who is helping to coordinate the CIT piece, so I think what you said was right. And he's knowledgeable, and he was able to talk about the mental health crisis response, the police part of the mental health crisis response in terms of.
He's been around quite some time.
But nobody
I just can't remember
specifically
his name.
designated.
Does what?
Nobody specifically designated.
Well, you could ask that question to the police department, because I don't want to speak for them.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll take care of that, and if they're not here in June, they'll be here in July, we have plenty to do in June. Okay, we can adjourn, folks.
alright,
Open
second.
comment. I was gonna ask something.
Yes, please,
At tomorrow's,
after we adjourn.
oh,
then-
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Alright,
We're
so
adjourned?
the motion
We're
to adjourn. Erlinda?
Yes.
Buna?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Margaret?
Yes.
Shelby?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Ben?
Yeah.